Bland.
I'm Claudia Baez.
And I'm Matt Nasser, and this is How Does the Art World Work? And today I have the pleasure of introducing my friend and colleague, Daniel Kukla, who's our guest. And welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be
We
here.
can't wait to find out how does the art world work for you.
I don't, yeah.
Yes.
Does it work? I don't know.
Well, that's what we're here to find out. But
We'll
maybe
figure it out.
First,
Some inside tips.
we can talk about your practice. You're an artist, photographer, installation. You have many fields of your visual art.
Yeah, I've worked in the art world for a long time. I work foremost as an artist, but I also work to earn a living as a photographer for galleries all over the city and with artists directly. And I also I worked for a stretch with an art advisor, so I've also taken on some of those art advising things as well. So it's been I piece it all together.
The perfect person to tell us how does the art world work?
Absolutely. You must have some information.
Gotta get it
Knowing
out of
all
me,
those people, it's so important who you hang out with, right?
It's
like,
true.
like one very prominent artist can say to you, I love what you're doing. Show me what you're doing. You want to come do this with me? Things like that. Things have happened to you like that?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah, I think that's also like the New York thing. I mean, you never know who you're going to meet, and you never want to burn any bridges either because it's a small world as well. So
That's interesting.
Yeah.
How did you first what was your first entree into the art world? Or when you were a child, were you particularly interested in the visual arts?
Yeah, I had always done photography throughout all of my upbringing, and I actually went to University of Toronto and I studied biology. So my focus was in the sciences, though I always knew that I wanted to come back to the arts, photography arts. I didn't really know there was much of a distinction at the time. So I eventually applied to International Center of Photography in New York, and I did a program on photojournalism and documentary studies. So that's kind of where I wouldn't even call that the art world. It was a creative practice in a way, but it was also journalism. So I kind of tried to bring in my background in science with reporting. And I did that for a while, but then it was increasingly became apparent to me that it's not an easy way to make a living in New York. So then I kind of shifted more into the arts. I had a residency in Joshua Tree National Park, maybe like 2012. And that was like the first time where I was like, oh, I can work as an artist as well. So it was a very eye-opening experience having time and space to just develop ideas without a specific output.
I did see in your website these like squares that you put in nature on top of an easel.
Yes,
The contrast of the nature. Is that the Joshua
So that
tree?
was the project that I was living alone in the park in a ranger station, and there was like a painter's easel available in the cabin, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So for like 2 weeks, I was there a month. 2 weeks, I did nothing. I mean, I was hiking every day. And then I finally kind of took a mirror out and was experimenting with it in the landscape. And then I really liked this idea of seeing like two planes at once. So then I took this painter's easel and set up a mirror, and I brought it throughout the park through like specific areas that I found were kind of important or inspiring.
It looks amazing.
Thanks.
I love those photographs. I think they're fantastic.
Thank you.
And I think lots of other people have copied you since.
Yeah, it's actually really flattering because I always get high school students that are studying photography emailing me, and they're like, what do you think of this? And I'm like, well, it's great, but maybe you can do it in your own way.
Derivative.
Yeah. Yeah.
Copyright infringement.
Sort of. So I've known you for a bit, and it is you're working with the environment a lot in your work. How is that in the art world in general? Does that conflict with each other? I mean, I think about the making objects is not so environmentally friendly in the art world as
Yeah, I mean, the art world is full of waste and toxic chemicals and mediums. And for my own practice, I find it really hard to produce work sometimes because I'm like, where is this going to live? What's the point behind it? Is this environmentally friendly in a way? So yeah, I always feel kind of conflicted with that. And
They don't look environmentally friendly. What I saw.
oh, yeah.
What are they made of? The other ones, the other series, the series that has little dots and
Oh,
different
so
colors.
most of this stuff
Are they photographed?
is photographic. So a lot of it is camera-less. So it's done in the darkroom without. So it's just photographic paper, and the one that you referred to, the spots were actually lightning bugs that I caught in Prospect Park, and I put them on the photographic emulsion, which is light sensitive, so it picks up the flashes. And then I bring it back to the darkroom and process it. So it's this kind of a way of documenting these ephemeral like pulses of light.
That's so nice.
so-
That gives it a very important dimension.
Yeah, but then I'm working with these incredibly toxic chemicals in the color darkroom. So it's
Have you run into many people working with fireflies? Because I've seen a couple of artists come across my desk in recent
Oh, really?
in recent times that have been sort of using fireflies in an interesting kind of way.
I've seen some photographic documentation, but not so much as like perhaps I'm sure there's people experimenting with it. Their populations are dwindling really fast, so it's something that's going to kind of in the next 20 years is going to be a very rare occurrence, especially in New York too. So
That's not
Really?
good.
That's
yeah,
sad.
yeah. I mean,
And Daniel, the last part in the website or whatever part that I was looking at is it says immediate photo or one photo or something like that.
One
What does that mean? The last one there is just like one photograph,
one photograph.
right? Isn't that called?
Well, I'm not sure about that, but it does raise a question for me about working as a fine arts photographer today, which is in the digital media when everything is so instantly reproducible. What do you do about sort of limited editions? Do you have open editions of work? How do you deal with that? Because I know a lot of photographers and they're kind of struggling with that, where the idea of scarcity is completely false, unlike sort of pre-digital era work where you could control the numbers much more easily.
I don't like open editions. I mean, a lot of my work is also that while they're photographs, they're unique works. So like the fireflies, for example, it's like that object can't be replicated. I mean, you could take a photo of it and print it, but that kind of takes away the magic of like this actual like emulsion.
The flies were actually there. Yeah.
I think, in my earlier work, I had done editions, but I think I find everything that I make, it's quite special. So I want it to be treated as if it's a unique work. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of the work I've seen of you, it is unique. You make these objects that there's photography involved with it, but it is a unique, like the mirrors and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I'm increasingly like while my background is in photography, it's right now I'm working with like paper marbling and applying that to photographs as well. So it's like adding some kind of painterly qualities to photographs. So I'm always kind of.
Well, it's like the Warhols where his hand is on them. They're much more
There you go.
valuable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, if it's just a silk screen and I don't even understand how these silk screens sell for that as much as they sell. Do you?
I think it's just the fame of the artist.
But the product itself is
Are you speaking of Andy Warhol or silk
yes,
screens
Andy
in general?
Warhol. Andy Warhol.
Yeah.
Silk screens.
It's even more.
Do you
more
think
if
it's
been a
completely
shot.
ridiculous, the price that they go for?
But I mean, that's a sort of a subjective of sort of taking Andy Warhol's significance as an artist, which he clearly was an extremely significant artist to the history of art, and then the preciousness of one particular object. I find his whole body of work aesthetically incredibly impressive and transformational to the history of art. But when you break it down into piece after piece after piece, I don't find each silkscreen so precious that I would pay millions of dollars for it, if that's what you're asking me. But
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
but I think the significance of the artist is enormous, even though I don't find there is no, to me, the kind of preciousness of the object is not really there in a lot of the later stuff, at least. Although he was hand painting, a lot of it very early
some
on,
of them were hand painted.
Can we switch gears? Because there's something, because I am often hiring installation photographers.
Yes.
And we have had, many installation photographers. And I find it very, very hard to find someone who's skilled enough to make our spaces, which are where I work at Lehman College. They're very beautiful spaces, but they're very tricky to photograph. There's a lot of varying light. There's a lot of varying ceiling heights. There's a lot of odd safety things that need to be sort of edited out. Tell us how you got started in that field, because I think it's a very interesting field that is not that
And also tell us how
well
expensive
understood.
you are, because Bart might hire you.
The rates, yes. Competitive rates.
I think as far as while I did like photojournalism, I did so many different areas of photography, from food photography to events and all of these things. And I kind of landed on the installation, was kind of just helping friends out with their, I have a show, and very casual. So, and then from that, I found it was a nice way to work, where it's kind of, and it's also a really nice opportunity where you get just solo time with a whole gallery or a museum. And it's really wonderful in that way. And I just kept moving forward with this and kind of working with some smaller galleries, and it kind of grew and grew. And then I actually learned like technically how to do these things well, because I was just kind of
And what
are
some of those techniques that you sort of?
Well, I can't reveal all my secrets.
You can.
Yes,
you can. This is what you're doing here.
I think it's a lot of. To be honest, I think I've been doing it so long. It's like a second nature thing, where I know what works and what doesn't work. And
is it like modeling, where you're trying to get the building to look better than it actually is in person?
Yeah, I saw these installation images the other day, where I was like, well, the artwork's great, but you're just seeing the architecture of the space, and we're not going to look at these images for the architecture. We're looking for the work. So I always trying to bring out the work to the forefront. So and technically, I mean, a lot of it comes down to lighting and apertures and all the very technical parts of the camera.
So how do you cultivate clients? Are people getting you through word of mouth? And
I think it's word of mouth, or to be honest, I never know.
They just call up and
I get like a random email, or I meet someone and they introduce. And actually, one of my favorite things is working with the artists directly in their studios and documenting their work. So it's like beyond installation photography, which I find even more fun, is like how to document a painting and represent the colors accurately as the artist would wish. And sometimes what we see in real life versus on the screen is drastically different. So in finding the middle ground that makes the artist happy as well. So, and then, this also branches out into doing portraits of artists and working. So in that kind of, a lot of word of mouth, I guess.
And you photograph the booths at art fairs, which is where this podcast was born out of our frustration during
a particular
art fair. So you have experience in that part of the art world as well.
Yeah, I found that there's always a need. There's a fair every week somewhere in the world, and there's more like larger fairs. So I would always kind of cluster together some clients and go to London or such, just to work with the galleries, and also to be immersed in what's happening in the art world at that time. It was a great opportunity to meet people as well.
And have you had a series? I mean, I'm working with an artist right now who we're doing a show on the wrapped object, and this particular artist had done some wonderful things. I think at London Freeze of the gauze draped like air conditioning things that are used to pump in cool air to these enormous tents. We're talking about the ecological stuff, and they look like these objects of mystery, that Christo would have done. When you're doing all this work, have you been tempted to sort of start a series of sort of behind the scenes at the art fair, or like catch people? Or do you think the people hiring you wouldn't be that thrilled by that?
No, I mean, I don't think it's actually that interesting to me. I mean, there are some weird things going on, and the amount of waste is also just like insane. Like the shipping of works all over the world constantly. I don't know. I think it kind of falls back to my earlier work with documentary photography, and I guess I'm just like less interested in that at this time. But
interesting.
I was listening to Colin Wilson last night when I couldn't sleep, and he's talking about the peak experience and about the different levels that you can attain as a human being. Like you can be, like right now we're using our consciousness and we're present here, but then when you go to sleep, you enter a different level, and then when you're awake and you are like bored to tears, or you're experiencing anxiety, or you're experiencing just like the nausea, the posts are called. It's like he calls that a second level, and then there's a third level, and how to attain the fourth level. And I have a feeling that with your work, you are looking for that. You're looking for an alternate. Do you use any substances to help you?
Well, Claudia, I'm being recorded.
Well, I think nature
is my substance.
Yeah, I think
and all
it
the
is.
things that come along with it.
Natural high. Yeah.
But no, I think it's a very in talking about like documenting behind the scenes. Yeah, it's interesting, but I'm trying to like
elevate,
figure out what are we doing here? What am I doing here? All the biggest questions.
Well, you mentioned consciousness, Claudia, and that's very much on my mind because of an article I read recently, which I find fascinating and profoundly disturbing. I don't know if you've heard of the critic Brian Sewell, who was a British art critic for many, many years. And the only reason I'm familiar with him is that my aunt, who I used to go to visit in London all through the 80s and 90s, was obsessed with Brian Sewell, who was a very cutting critic and had always very acidic commentary about the art world. She thought he was very funny and very humorous, and we would hear a lot about Brian Sewell. He's been dead for a number of years. One of the British papers is going to use AI to reactivate Brian Sewell's voice to begin reviewing contemporary art shows. And he's going to be given, this AI, Brian Sewell, is going to be given a newspaper column that's going to run on a regular basis while AI spits out pithy commentary in the mode of Brian Sewell. And I just find it incredibly disturbing, for one, that it would seem to sort of, if newspaper columns, I realize that most people are not reading newspapers in hard copy, but if newspaper column inches or eyeballs can be given over to AI of dead people, what does that mean? That there's just correspondingly less oxygen for new young voices to emerge?
Well, I don't know any new young art critic. Do you know anybody? I don't even know the names of the art critics.
No.
But I think this is a fascinating idea. I kind of like it. I wish can I get my art reviewed by
maybe
for a price, I'm sure.
Yeah, Brian Sewell TM. But it is incredible. But I think that it just keeps feeding back into the idea of the culture kind of eating itself in some very profound way, that it's not moving forward.
That AI is being powered by a nuclear power plant.
Is it?
Of course. The energy used to power these chips and these clouds to host this AI is now is a problem. As far as the environmental, all your Instagram photographs need to be stored.
I like the idea, but you raise a very good point about, does that leave less space for other humans?
Well, it's sort of, Matt, we're talking about the acting profession.
Yeah.
We're very, very close to, movie stars who have been scanned this way and that over decades. We could just license their images. Why not just keep going with Tom Hanks till the end of time rather than getting any new movie stars?
Well, in California, they made it illegal to use the AI to replace an actor. So that's legislation stepping in now, usually very late in the game, but they'll figure
it out.
Yes,
they'll just move it out of California. That's what they'll do.
Which it's been happening for years now anyway.
Processes. Yeah. I'm very interested to see Robert Zemeckis' new movie where Tom Hanks and Robin, is it Wright, from, what's that movie they were in that was so famous?
I remember the
You've Got Mail?
Underworld.
No. Life is like a box of chocolates.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump. But now they seem to have mastered the de-aging process. Apparently they've taken it to the next level where it isn't so creepy, and that, what is it? The valley of not the valley of indecision, the
uncanny valley.
The uncanny valley. Yeah. Yes, that's right. Do you find that with photoshopping, like interiors, that you can keep photoshopping them? For instance, I always want our people to remove the fire extinguishers, like the weird things in the ceiling, ugly doors that I don't like, and after a certain point, it starts to take on an uncanny quality.
Yeah, it definitely, it's endless, really.
Do you tell them to stop at a certain point?
No. There's always this need to have these images immediately. So at some point you just And also, like, who cares, really? Like,
Well, that is a good point. I mean, the purpose of this is to document an experience of an installation, of an exhibition, and you're making it completely not what that moment was with photoshopping all these things out of it.
Well, of course, when the exhibition exists primarily online, or you know that far more people are going to see it online than will ever see it in the brief time it's up in person, it becomes a very strong temptation, I think, to just Photoshop out the flaws, because that will sort of correct the historical record.
Absolutely. And it'll be preserved in pristine way. I agree. I
Yeah.
mean, why not use Photoshop? I think why not use AI? Why not have the technical things that we have available?
yeah.
You know, I mean, if you're going to be an art critic, you have to, muscle your way up there somehow.
Well, yes, but the question is that if you're competing against famous dead people who are still spitting out pithy reviews in their style from 50 years ago.
And they're brilliant. Well, then
And
you
they're
have
brilliant.
to be more brilliant.
I hope the estate or his
I'm
relatives
sure
will
that they
get
are.
some.
Yes, we'll have to have a follow-up on this.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I'm
don't
interested
know.
in what this person is going to say.
And you were just in New Zealand. Has the art world gotten to New Zealand yet?
It's always been in New Zealand. Yeah. No, last year I was with my partner. He was on sabbatical, and I was. We were living in Auckland for 4 months and traveling a bunch. But it was actually really nice to see the art world somewhere. I mean, I don't think you can get any further from New York. But they do have a really thriving contemporary art scene. And then they do a really amazing job of like integrating Maori people and the indigenous people of New Zealand into the landscape of the city. The language is used, the artwork of the Maori is used throughout like the public planning of the city, and then there's these really interesting like synthesis of like contemporary art and more traditional artwork. So yeah, the art world is there. I think that it's nothing like New York, which is so fueled by money and greed.
Avarice.
So what is your biggest revelation that you can give us about the art world and how it works?
Do you see yourself staying in the art world for the long haul?
Well, we want to know how the art world works. We want to know it from different perspectives. I want to know, how do you get into a gallery?
Yeah.
How do you, become somebody
Rich and
the
famous.
art critic wants to talk about? How do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I know how some friends have got into galleries, and I think it's this. I don't think there's any specific path.
So tell us one friend how they got into a gallery.
Someone had a show at I think it was a smaller museum. It was like a big group show, and then one of the directors of the gallery saw their work and then pitched it to the owners, and it's one of those things. But honestly, I don't know. I think that I once had a call with it was really it was about this series that I created in Joshua Tree. I was talking to this gallerist, and it was a phone call, and the first question he asked me was, "Are you wealthy?" Which I was like, "Oh, what's that have to do with anything?" And basically he wanted to know that if he took me on, that he would not lose money, and that I could cover my things. So
or that you could make your friends buy your work.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. So I was like, oh, okay, well, no, I can't say that I am. But anyway, we ended up meeting, and it just didn't work out. But I was always wondering
Yeah, if that's the first question, it's not going to work out.
yeah.
Are you
It's
wealthy?
very strange
It's a strange question.
way to go about asking an artist. No?
Exactly. I think so. But
Makes no sense.
I don't know. I mean, I think that
I do believe that artists that are wealthy manage to get themselves out there.
yeah, I would say that
Sorry to
the
say.
best way to get into a gallery is to have a really strong network of other artists, and everyone's kind of supporting each other. I think this is the only real way, and then it carries you much further beyond whatever the gallery is, because galleries are closing and opening and closing. So
Well, it is, but I also think it's interesting. There was a line I remember from the show Girls where they said, there's always, paraphrasing it, there's always a rich grandmother there somewhere in the background paying these bills for creative people who are doing things. And there's a kind of, I'm very cognizant, because we work with artists who are I work with a lot of artists who are really struggling, having grinding day jobs to make their work. And a lot of times I'll work with more successful artists who will often, give very motivational speeches about how I made it and you can too. And I know they have the metaphorical grandmother or richer spouse in the background who is footing the bills for things. And that's not necessarily bad, but I think if you're doing, if you're giving a kind of like up from the bootstraps kind of thing, like I came from nothing and so can you, and telling that to young people, and then you've got this whole other sort of infrastructure going on in the back that is kind of supporting this narrative, it's a weird place to be in. And so I've had some very real conversations with a lot of our younger students, like you have to either be prepared for poverty or to get another job or to marry rich,
It's like perpetuating that American dream myth of like work hard and you'll succeed. And, a lot of people work really hard their whole lives and don't have much to show for it. And
well, it's also, I think having worked with a lot of artists, you can have a resume as long as your arm with regional shows and museum group shows and all kinds of certificates of merit, and really not have a financially viable plan to make that. And that doesn't make those things not worthy in every sense of the word.
Yeah.
But it's hard to parlay that into a living, I think. So.
For sure. Well, that
on
story.
that terrible note, we have to end.
It's like the AI is fake. The stories of the artists are fake.
We're fake.
Exhibitions are fake. This podcast is fake. There's no truth in art.
They're there.
That's how the art
We'll never
works.
get
Fake.
to the bottom of this, ever.
Because it's not real. It's the Matrix.
Well, I do feel, we're on, I think this is we're approaching our dozenth episode. And I feel we've all of our guests, there's a kind of, no one has had a definitive answer for us about how the art world works for them personally. I think it's always the kind of make your way as you go and seize the opportunities that present themselves. Yes?
Absolutely. And then trying to develop community, I think, is one of the most important things.
Key.
And at the end of the day, like, I think you should make art for yourself beyond, it's great to have exposure and people interested, but I don't make my artwork for that reason.
That's right.
And
that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
I agree. 100%.
That's a better way to end. Thank you.
Much
Dan.
better.
Thank you for bringing us back
Sure.
to
I'm Claudia
what's really
Baez.
important.
See you next month.
Yes, next month. I'm Matt Nasser.
I'm Bartholomew Bland.
And that's Daniel Kukla.
Daniel Kukla.
Yay,
Thanks.
bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.